told us to hold up your thumb just like this. And if the cloud is smaller than your thumb, now you run for the hills.
Is it your thumb or mine?
Of course.
Mutants are best equipped to deal with the world today.
Who else?
The ghouls?
Please.
Normals?
They brought nuclear death to us all. This will be the age of mutants.
Mutants.
The Master, also known as the founder of the Super Mutants, is one of the most iconic and disturbing figures in the Fallout universe. To most players, he's simply known as the final antagonist of the original Fallout. Revered by his followers, the fanatical children of the Cathedral, as the Holy Flame, Dark God and Father Hope, he was not merely a mutant leader, but the architect of a radical vision to forcibly evolve humanity into a singular, unified species using the Forced Evolutionary Virus. He established the Unity, a cult-like organization devoted to this ideology of post-humanist transformation in a world ravaged by nuclear devastation. Where others saw ruin, the Master saw opportunity to wipe the slate clean and rebuild mankind in a form immune to division, conflict, and weakness. By the time he was encountered by the Vault Dweller, the Master had undergone a grotesque transformation. No longer fully human, he had become a horrific fusion of dozens of human and mutant bodies melded with computer systems. He spoke in a dissonant chorus of overlapping voices, each one surfacing and receding as he spoke, reflecting the many consciousnesses trapped within his mutated form. His mind, too, was a network, distributed, disjointed, and brilliant in its madness. The ultimate goal of the Master was to use FEV to birth a new species, stronger, unified, and capable of thriving in the irradiated wastes. These beings would later be known as Super Mutants, creatures of immense strength, stamina, and resistance to disease. To the Master, they were the future of Earth, a race free from the pettiness and tribalism that had doomed mankind. In his mind, conflict arose from difference, and so to eliminate war, one had to eliminate those differences entirely. As a character, he represented the terrifying intersection of idealism and monstrosity. He was a being who genuinely believed he was saving humanity, even as he mutated and overrode it into something unrecognizable. Twisted, intelligent, and horrifyingly sympathetic in his rationale, the Master's warped vision of peace through forced evolution remains one of the most philosophically complex and disturbing aspects of the Fallout universe.
We mounted an expedition. God, Richard Gray led a small group of us up there. Richard Gray was a doctor, a little older than me, and Fran was smart. He found the source. We made it to some sort of central core, like a plant of some sort. That's when it happened. A robot crane crashed into us. Last I saw Gray, he was flying through the air and into some sort of acid bath. I was in bad shape and, well, I passed out.
Before he became the twisted mind behind the Unity, the Master was born Richard Moreau sometime before the Great War. For more information on the Great War, check out my lore video in the description below. Details about his early life are scarce, but what is known is that he was among the fortunate few to take refuge in Vault 8 when the bombs fell. Life underground, however, didn't last forever. When Vault 8 reopened in 2092, Moreau was exiled for murder. He traveled over 400 miles south to the newly established trading city known as the Hub, where he started a new life and adopted the name Richard Gray. There he rebuilt his reputation, becoming a respected doctor and earning the admiration of many, including Harold, a prominent caravan master who came to view Gray as both a brilliant physician and a thoughtful philosopher. Gray's story might have ended quietly in the Hub had it not been for the increasing number of mutant attacks threatening trade caravans. Gangs and scavengers had always been a risk, but now grotesque, inhuman creatures were emerging from the northern wastes with disturbing frequency. The attacks were so devastating that caravan leaders were forced to hire additional guards, yet casualties continued to rise. Determined to get to the bottom of it, Harold organized an expedition to trace the source of these attacks. Gray, driven by both curiosity and a desire to help, joined the mission and quickly assumed a leadership role. In mid-2102, Gray led the expedition, including Harold, Francine, Mark, and several others northwest, toward the region from which the attacks originated. On June 23rd, the group stumbled upon the Mariposa military base, a heavily fortified ruin now overrun by mutants and hostile security bots. The team sustained heavy losses trying to breach the facility. Eventually, only Gray and Harold reached the interior, discovering the facility's old Forced Evolutionary Virus research vats. In a fateful moment, a malfunctioning robot crane collapsed onto them. Harold was knocked unconscious and later awoke outside the base with no memory of how he escaped. His last glimpse of Gray was of a man being hurled into a vat filled with what looked like acid, but was in fact raw FEV. The Forced Evolutionary Virus is the twisted backbone of one of the most significant and terrifying chapters in Fallout. Originally conceived before the Great War, FEV began its life not as a biological weapon, but as a well-meaning, if profoundly misguided attempt to improve humanity. Developed by the West Tech Research Facility under US government contracts, it was designed to bolster the human immune system, increasing physical capabilities, and create soldiers resistant to disease, radiation, and environmental hazards. The idea was simple: force evolution by manipulating the genetic structure of living organisms. In execution, however, it became something far more dangerous. FEV is not a traditional virus. It is a mutagenic, self-replicating strain of genetic code, essentially a soup of retroviruses engineered to rewrite a host's DNA. When introduced into a subject, it overwhelms the body's natural defenses, replaces its genetic instructions, and begins a grotesque and irreversible transformation. The results vary widely depending on the subject's age, health, and exposure to radiation. In some cases, it produces superhuman strength, increased size, and near immortality. In others, it causes grotesque mutations, mental instability, or death. Gray floated in a vat of this FEV for days, barely clinging to life. Immersed in the virus for nearly a month, he experienced an agonizing alteration. When he finally regained consciousness and crawled out, his body had already begun mutating into something inhuman. But the virus hadn't only changed his flesh, it had radically expanded his intellect. As the mutation stabilized, Gray found himself capable of solving problems that had previously eluded him. His body continued to change, becoming a hideous amalgamation of tissues and minds. Over time, he began absorbing animals and humans that wandered into the base. Those he consumed didn't just die, they became a part of him, their consciousnesses merging into his own. This collective of voices and personalities became the foundation of a new being.
All that...
Resist?
Yes. And all those that are required for the...
Unity?
As well. The remainder will be allowed to live out their days, but under... Unity.
Control.
And protection.
But none shall breed, for they will be the last of their race.
His experimentation didn't stop with people. He exposed the base's infesting animals to the virus as well. In one experiment, he dipped a rat and a dog into the FEV simultaneously, resulting in a fused creature that shocked and inspired him. That moment sparked the beginning of a new ideology, one based on unification. From these early experiments, Gray began to develop the philosophical framework that would eventually evolve into the Unity. The foundation had been laid, and the man once known as Richard Gray had vanished, replaced by something far more dangerous, intelligent, and driven. The Master was born. In December 2102, the Master, already well into his metamorphosis, began to deliberately manipulate the FEV mutating his body, injecting doses of the virus into different regions of his flesh in an attempt to guide its effects. These experiments eventually granted him an extraordinary new ability, the capacity to neurologically interface with computer systems. With this mental link to the Mariposa base's databanks, Gray was no longer just a mutation, he was now a thinking machine of flesh and circuitry. Armed with this knowledge, he intensified his experiments on the humans who wandered too close to the facility. Initial results were failures, but in January 2103, Gray made a crucial discovery. He realized that radiation exposure prior to infection was the missing variable in determining whether a human would become a coherent super mutant or devolve into a mindless brute. The first successful subject, an intelligent mutant, did more than just survive. It became something more. Gray assimilated it into his growing mental network, forming the foundation of what would become the Master's hive mind. With this communion of thought, the Unity was born.
It's those mutants. I've done some calculations, and the mutant population is far greater than could be expected by natural growth or mutations. This leads me to believe, and I don't really understand it, but it looks like someone's generating new mutants, and at a startling rate.
The Unity was a post-humanist movement built upon the transformative powers of the Forced Evolutionary Virus. Under the Master's leadership, the Unity was both a philosophical crusade and a militant organization aimed at reshaping the future of humanity. At its core, the Unity sought to forcibly evolve mankind into a single superior species, the Super Mutant. Whether through persuasion or coercion, the Master's objective was to see as many humans as possible undergo mutation, believing that through this transformation, humanity could finally escape its self-destructive nature. The Master claimed that those incapable of undergoing mutation due to genetic incompatibility with FEV or those who refused it altogether would not necessarily be killed so long as they accepted sterilization. This, he argued, would prevent impure or divergent genetic lines from propagating and interfering with the Unity's vision of a homogeneous, conflict-free future. However, open resistance to the Unity was met with swift and brutal execution, as such defiance was viewed as a threat to progress and peace. The Master's justification was rooted in the belief that super mutants were inherently superior, stronger, more durable, and better suited to the harsh conditions of the post-nuclear wasteland. In his mind, eliminating biological and ideological differences would resolve the divisions that led to nuclear war in the first place. If all were made equal in form and purpose, there would be no more hatred, no more racism, no more war, only unity, harmony, and strength. It was a twisted utopia built on forced conformity, and while well-intentioned in theory, it was deeply flawed in execution. This was because, unbeknownst to the Master, his future harbored a fatal mistake. All super mutants created by FEV were sterile. This threatened the viability of the entire Unity project. Without the ability to reproduce, the super mutants would eventually fade from existence, unable to replace themselves without an endless supply of new human subjects to transform. The Master believed he was leading humanity into a better future, but in truth, he was engineering its end. His appearance was as horrific as it was symbolic of his journey, an amalgamation of mutated flesh from the many unfortunate souls he absorbed over time. His misshapen form was fused around the remnants of an overseer's command chair, complete with a flickering heart monitor embedded in the mound of tissue. He no longer possessed legs. Instead, a massive fleshy tendril sprouted from below him, anchoring his bulk to the floor and surrounding machinery. His arms twisted outward in unnatural directions, unnervingly thin and ending without hands. One of his most disturbing features was his right hand, or what used to be, replaced by a mutated externalized eye, constantly watching. Adding to the horror, his voice was not his alone. It was a discordant chorus, a patchwork of different voices belonging to those he's consumed, shifting and fluctuating mid-sentence, giving him an unearthly and often unsettling tone. This fractured voice reflected the complexity of the Master's personality. Though mutated beyond human recognition, he retained immense intelligence and philosophical depth, albeit warped by delusion and fanaticism. The Master believed with messianic certainty that he was the future of humankind. He exhibited little patience or sympathy for those who disagreed with his plan. Those who resisted were deemed obstacles to be removed. Yet he was not merely a raving monster. The Master was articulate and could be eerily polite. He often spoke to others, including the Vault Dweller, with a strange charisma, equal parts charming and unhinged.
We need one race.
Race.
One goal.
Goal.
One people to move forward to our destiny.
Despite his immense intelligence and newfound abilities, the Master's scientific method remained fundamentally flawed. He carried out mutation experiments without proper control groups or predictive testing, overlooking the sterility problem. Even so, his presence and intellect were overwhelming. The FEV didn't just reshape his body, it enhanced his natural charisma and unlocked his latent talents for manipulation and persuasion. His arguments were not only logical and compelling, but delivered with psychological precision. Those who could resist his rhetoric still had to contend with his growing army of super mutants, strength to support his ideology when persuasion failed. What's interesting is that the Master also developed psychic abilities. Long-term FEV exposure had given him the power to penetrate and disturb the minds of others. His psychic field was so potent enough to physically harm intruders or warp their perception. Those who served under him were required to wear psychic nullifiers just to survive their encounters. Anyone walking through the corridor of revulsion, the psychic projection leading to the Master, was subjected to vividly disturbing hallucinations. These abilities made direct confrontation not just dangerous, but psychologically traumatizing.
The
Unity.
will bring about the master race,
Master.
Master!
one able to survive, or even
Thrive.
in the wasteland. As long as there are differences, we will
Tear ourselves apart!
fighting each other.
From the moment Unity was created, the Master turned his focus toward cultivating his new species to inherit the Earth. Using knowledge, reason, and the raw power of FEV, he began to collect more test subjects from nearby human settlements. Progress was slow, wanderers were scarce, but over the next 3 decades he managed to build a modest but formidable number of super mutants. Everything changed with the Great Winter of 2130. The extreme conditions led to a sharp decline in available test subjects. Faced with declining numbers, the Master shifted his strategy. In 2131, he turned to the very system he'd once relied upon as a human: caravans. These traveling merchants, unknowingly drawing ever closer to his stronghold, became the new source of human material. Ironically, it was the caravan trade, once a symbol of fragile civilization and the thing he set out to protect, that now fed his vision of a new order. As more caravans vanished under mysterious circumstances, nearby settlements began to fear unknown wasteland monsters. Never suspecting the truth, their people were being transformed in the name of evolution. The deception worked. The Master's army expanded rapidly. By 2137, there were enough super mutants to support mass production of conversions. Though the process still had a modest success rate of 15 to 20%, with only half of those joining the ranks of his army, the Unity was now growing faster than ever. What began as an experiment had become a doctrine. Over the next 15 years, the Unity spread throughout New California, recruiting, converting, and preparing for the moment it would reveal itself to the world. To the Master, this was not conquest, but salvation. Whether humanity was ready or not was irrelevant. Its evolution had already begun. In 2152, the Master made a strategic shift in his vision for the Unity by recruiting Morpheus and his doomsday cultists. Recognizing the tactical value of maintaining a network of unmutated humans, he saw that such individuals could serve as effective spies and infiltrators in settlements where super mutants would stand out. This led to the creation of the Children of the Cathedral, a religious front that publicly presented itself as a peaceful spiritual movement while secretly acting as the mouthpiece and covert arm of the Unity. Through them, the Master expanded his reach across the wasteland while cloaking his true ambitions. Just 3 years later, in 2155, the Unity's progress accelerated dramatically. A caravan of Vault dwellers from the Los Angeles Vault, an early prototype, was captured, and the Master saw an opportunity not just for more test subjects, but for a new headquarters. Transferring both his command and his expansive body into the depths of the Vault, he ordered Morpheus and his cultists to repurpose the ruined building above it into a religious temple. Thus, the Cathedral was born. It became both a place of worship for the children and a fortified citadel for the Unity's operations. Morpheus became the cult's figurehead, answering directly to the Master, while the Cathedral itself was protected by the Nightkin, elite super mutants outfitted with stealth boy devices, making them invisible and deadly.
We found a research facility in operational shape about 70 years ago, a former military base that had been used to research a special virus. Yes, the FEV virus. It was originally developed to turn soldiers into super warriors, but it failed. The warriors were tough and strong, but far too stupid.
After relocating from Mariposa, the Master further expanded, literally and figuratively. As he continued to absorb organic material, his body fused with the Vault's infrastructure. Tendrils extended through corridors and into computer systems, integrating him into the very structure of the vault. By the time the Vault Dweller arrived, the once pristine facilities had become a nest of flesh, wires, and bone. Human limbs protruded from walls and machinery, all extensions of the Master's ever-growing biomass. Despite his physical domination of the space, the Master had made a crucial mistake. His nervous system remained centralized, a singular vulnerability in an otherwise distributed body. In the end, that oversight would prove to be one of the many that unraveled his vision of unity. Within the vault, the Master uncovered a trove of valuable information, most importantly the locations of other vaults. Armed with this data, he dispatched teams to investigate suspected vault sites, seeking ideal candidates for forced mutation. However, not every operation ended in success. When a detachment arrived at the ruins of Bakersfield in search of Vault 12, they encountered a hostile population of ghouls. Combat erupted between the two sides, only ending when a ghoul leader named Set negotiated a ceasefire. He revealed that the ghouls were in fact the irradiated remnants of Vault 12's former residents. To maintain control and ensure future cooperation, the Unity left behind a garrison force to oversee the area and apprehend any humans who might pass by. Through a careful blend of deception, religious fervor, and militaristic ambition, the Unity evolved into a force that extended beyond brute strength. With the children of the Cathedral as its mask and the Night King guarding its secrets, the Master's vision crept ever closer to fruition, one mutation at a time. But on December 5th, 2161, a Vault Dweller emerged from the safety of Vault 13, sent by the Overseer on a critical mission to locate a replacement water purification chip. What began as a seemingly simple objective quickly escalated into something far greater. As the Vault Dweller ventured deeper into the wasteland, they uncovered troubling rumors and first-hand accounts of a growing force sweeping across the west coast, led by a brilliant entity known only as the Master. After successfully recovering the water chip and returning to Vault 13, the Vault Dweller reported everything they'd seen. Alarmed by the information regarding the mutant threat, the Overseer issued a new directive. The Vault Dweller was to locate and destroy both the Master and the FEV vats fueling the creation of his army. By then, the Unity's operations were expanding rapidly, and the children of the Cathedral, its religious and ideological front, were already preparing for a large-scale assault on the New California region. The Master's plan appeared unstoppable, but the Master had not anticipated the persistence and skill of the Vault Dweller. On March 3, 2162, in a final act of sabotage, the Vault Dweller infiltrated the Cathedral and detonated a nuclear device, annihilating the Master and his headquarters in one decisive blow. In retaliation, Super Mutants launched an attack on Necropolis, hoping to find the one responsible, but the Vault Dweller had already vanished into the wasteland. Just weeks later, on April 20th, they returned to deliver the final blow, this time targeting the Mariposa military base where the original FEV vats were located. The destruction of the base marked the true end of the Unity.
But it cannot be. This would mean that
All my work
has been for nothing. Everything that I've tried to...
A failure!
It can't be.
The death of the Master was the first major step towards ending his mad dream of conquest and enforced peace. But it is the destruction of the vats that neutralizes the mutant threat. Without the ability to create more mutants and enforce their harsh brand of justice, the mutant armies flee to the east, beyond the no man's land.
Although the Vault Dweller disappeared from public life, their actions left a lasting impact. The Brotherhood of Steel stepped in to contain the remaining super mutant threat, driving them back and quietly establishing itself as a rising power in the post-war world. While the Unity had fallen, the super mutants were not entirely extinguished. Survivors scattered across the region. Some, like Marcus and Knight Jacob, sought peace and understanding, founding the town of Broken Hills in 2185, a place where ghouls, super mutants, and humans could live together in relative harmony. Others, disillusioned or leaderless, migrated further north and east in search of purpose or refuge, carrying with them the legacy of the Master's failed vision. Though the Unity had crumbled, its effects would echo throughout the wasteland for generations to come. The legacy of the Master did not end with his death, though his plans for unifying humanity under a new evolved race were ultimately thwarted by the Vault Dweller. Echoes of his ambition continued to reverberate across the wasteland. One such remnant came in the form of the new creatures he left behind, abominations born from his gene-splicing experiments. Among the most recognizable of these creatures are centaurs and floaters, horrific hybrids that seem to exhibit a strange mutual affinity, often traveling together as though drawn by a shared origin or instinctual bond. These entities outlive their creator, scattered across the post-apocalyptic landscape as living testaments to the Master's twisted vision. The fall of the Unity shattered the once cohesive super mutant army into scattered factions. With the Master gone, former generals and officers led splintered groups, each forging their own path. Some descended into savagery, while others sought purpose and new ideologies. By 2281, one such faction had formed under the leadership of Nightkin Tabitha, establishing the so-called state of Utobitha, atop Black Mountain in the Mojave Wasteland. Though limited in numbers and isolated by terrain, the group became infamous for its violence, launching frequent and brutal assaults against travelers, earning a reputation as a persistent threat. In contrast, Marcus, one of the Master's former lieutenants, sought a more peaceful path. He not only founded Broken Hills, as I mentioned earlier, but he would also establish Jacobstown in the 2260s, a settlement where super mutants and humans could coexist. His continued efforts represented a conscious departure from the Master's domination-centric philosophy, envisioning a future rooted in cooperation rather than conquest. Despite the Vault Dwellers' pivotal role in stopping the Master, their memoirs notably omit the full horror of what they encountered. Perhaps out of mercy or the impossibility of properly articulating it, the Vault Dweller never detailed what the Master truly was or how he was defeated, mentioning only his connection to the super mutant army. Yet the consequences of the Master's actions persisted. When the Enclave began excavating the ruins of the Mariposa military base using enslaved miners from Redding, they unwittingly released trace amounts of FEV that had survived the facility's destruction. This exposure mutated the miners into a second generation of super mutants. While these mutants were often as large or even larger than the originals, they lacked the guiding influence of the Master. Most were intellectually inferior, with the original Unity super mutants frequently mocking them for their diminished mental faculties. The lone exception to this pattern was the monstrous and intelligent Frank Horrigan, a government experiment rather than a byproduct of uncontrolled mutation.
Having those aberrations of nature close enough to smell is making me sick to my stomach.
Super mutants? I thought the enemy was the Institute.
Super mutants are no better than synths. They're a reminder of man's folly when it comes to harnessing technology. Whether it's using biochemistry to manipulate genes, or trying to create life from a bunch of circuits. It's the wrong path for science.
FEV ultimately remained a potent reminder of the dangers of unchecked science, hubris, and the illusion of control. It represented the central tragedy of Fallout, the idea that in trying to save the world, humanity simply doomed it in a different way. What began as a cure became a curse, and in the hands of the Master, it nearly remade the world in his image, sterile, monstrous, and united under the banner of a misguided dream.
I don't think that I can
Continue.
Continue?
to have done the things I have done in the name of progress and healing. It was madness. I can see that now. Madness.
Madness?
There is no hope. Leave now. Leave while you still have
Hope.